Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in into this special ANC feature. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce podcast producer Maxim Saakyan, who will be talking to us today about his beautifully produced podcast, Uncovering Roots, and specifically its first mini-series, focusing on both the harrowing and very extraordinary story of Armenian Genocide survivor, Aurora Mardiganian. Hello, Max. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so would you like to give us an introduction to the podcast Uncovering Roots and what inspired you to create that podcast?
Yeah, definitely. So Uncovering Roots is a brand new podcast where we just released the first miniseries, as you said, on the investigation into the story of Aurora. So the podcast aims to tackle a wide range of topics, but concentrating mainly on the SWANA region, which is Southwest Asia and North Africa, and also indigenous people from across the globe. I'm a really firm believer that creating something creative and engaging is the best way of teaching people, whether that's about culture, history, science, anything really. And I know there are so many stories that are out there worldwide, undiscovered. They might just be known in their local town, family, or even just the country. There's just something unbelievable about like telling someone's story. And I think Aurora really proves that. And also telling these stories in English, giving an outlet for Westerners to learn about the region. So that's what Uncovering Roots tries to do. Honor the stories and tell it in a way that's engaging to like a big audience.
Okay. As mentioned in the first 3 episodes of Uncovering Roots, they dive into Aurora, or Ashalus Mardiganian's unimaginable life, through the genocide, the difficult escape 2 years after, and then also her life as an eventual author and film star in America, and her struggles to cope with the pressures of being exploited by the film industry, still fresh from the heavy trauma that she had experienced years before. As Atom Egoyan, the famous film director, described it, she was a super survivor. And what was it about Aurora's genocide experience that really resonated with you to tell her story?
I mean, you listen to her story, what she went through both in America and Armenia. It just doesn't sound real. It is that unbelievable. When I interviewed Anthony Slide, the expert on the film, and he actually met Aurora, he didn't even think she actually existed. She was just some made-up character to summarize what happened during the Armenian Genocide. But she was real. And what she went through during the genocide, I just don't know how she even survived, not only physically, but mentally as well. To see a family murdered, being sold time and time again. The amount of escape stories I heard from her testimonies was just crazy. And then the next chapter of her life in America, where she was the protagonist in a film based on her life at just 16 years old. But not just that, but the film broke records everywhere. Like, can you imagine this right now? A film based on the Armenian Genocide being shown in the Royal Albert Hall for 3 weeks straight, breaking box office records in America. It's just crazy. So I think the world really needed to hear her story. I think people really struggle with empathy when talking about big numbers of people being murdered. But when they hear the story of just one person, people suddenly are more inclined to listen, to care. I think we've seen that with Anne Frank, now Aurora, Alan Kurdi, and many others.
Yeah, I completely echo your statements about it being just unimaginable how big this film came. And there's this great quote in the podcast from Eduardo Cosayan, who's an Argentine-American who was able to actually trace the surviving remnant of Aurora's film, Ravished Armenia. He said, "The one who leaves a record transits memory. Whoever has a memory does not die. The peoples who lose it are condemned to disappear." These words should encourage other Armenians to be interested in documenting and sharing the stories of their ancestors who have also experienced such unthinkable trials, don't you think?
100%. I think documenting and archiving your own family as well, I think is unbelievably important. Whether you're Armenian, English, whatever, I think also every person has that unique story to them. So yeah, please archive your parents, archive your family. So yeah, a very useful thing to have.
Yeah. Now, 2023 is actually significant because it's the 75th anniversary of signing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also the UN Convention on Genocide. Those landmark declarations codified this crime of genocide into international law, triggered by mostly World War II, but also in part by the absence of international provisions to charge and sentence those Ottoman officials who had previously perpetrated the Armenian genocide. So how do you see that things could have been different in Aurora's life if these human laws had already pre-existed?
It's a good question. I'm not sure, to be completely honest. I don't think many people are. Maybe there would have been something different, but I also think we see in the modern day horrific events are happening now. So would have things been different? I don't know. I think we live in a world where you sadly can get away with a lot, especially if you have power, which is just used as leverage. I think also genocide denial is a real problem, where people like to whitewash the term as well by calling it a war or a conflict between two countries. And I think these are very, very dangerous narratives. We also see the term ethnic cleansing a lot. And I think it's important to actually use the word genocide. Ethnic cleansing isn't a crime per se. It's something that's described when talking about genocide, which is a crime. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think people are getting away with it now. So would they have gotten away with it even if it was they had that letter then? Probably, especially if it was during World War One as well. Yeah, it's tough to say.
Yeah, sometimes it's contextual, I suppose. And leading from your thoughts, it dangerously feels like things exist today, and we see crimes against humanity still happening in 2024 across the globe. And in 2023, we resonate with the continuing genocide of the Armenians in Artsakh. How do you think that we should be learning from these lessons?
Yeah, I mean, it's really depressing. I think in the grand scheme of things, sometimes I just can't even believe that these things are like truly happening. It's just sickening. What happens in Artsakh breaks me. I mean, a 9-month blockade, 9 months, nearly an entire year, and nothing really got done. You had 2 or 3 articles from mainstream media, and that's it. And then you had the forced expulsion of all Armenians. The first time there hasn't been Armenians in Artsakh for thousands of years before Christ, and still nothing has really been done about it. I still want to believe that good will prevail in history. I think how many years, generations that will take, I don't know. But yeah, what we can do, I don't know, campaign, email your MP, protest, just share things on your story, teach people if you are mentally able to.
Yeah, talking about activism, let's move to thinking about the United Kingdom for a second. So for many years, the Armenian community has made strong efforts to push for this recognition of genocide through the government. And that's by protesting, hosting events, political involvement, writing letters, as you mentioned. And of course, this is something that the ANC-UK is also deeply involved with. The government historically had a leave it to the courts sort of mentality, meaning that they saw genocide not as a political issue, but more of like a judicial or historical issue. Of course, unfortunately, it's not really in that bubble. It's a very highly political topic. And against this position, the UK actually recognizes 5 genocides, including the Holocaust or Srebrenica in Bosnia. But you say, however, in your podcasts that you think the tides could be turning for recognition. So what enables you to keep optimism?
Yeah, I mean, the UK is a funny one. I mean, one of the craziest things was one of the MPs saying they can't recognize the Armenian genocide because, Raphael Lemkin only coined it and it became official in, I think, 1948. But then obviously that was very quickly denied when the Holocaust was obviously recognized. And that was before genocide was a thing. But my optimism mainly comes from America recognizing the genocide rather than the UK itself. It was also very good. I mean, the MP I spoke to in the podcast also seemed confident it will get recognized at some point. And I think it's unbelievably important that happens. And America doing that is very big. But this also isn't just about history. I think not recognizing the genocide has a direct impact on what happens today in Armenia. So all I can do is, hope, send letters to my MP, really push for this to happen, because I do believe it will. I think it's just a matter of time. the more pressure we put in, the sooner it's going to be. So,
yeah, let's keep that momentum. So do you have a message for what we can keep doing or do more of in the British community?
As I said, write letters to your MPs, protest, make a stand. If you're mentally able to explain to your friends and peers about the genocide, if that's too much, you can share resources, whether it's podcasts, articles, books. There's a lot out there. And I think we also need to support common causes too. So, for example, what's happening to the Kurds in Turkey is horrifying. Palestine, Sudan. I think we need to stand up for others. I really believe that everything is connected and liberation is for all, which feels like an obvious statement, but sometimes it's not always that way. So,
absolutely. And some food for thought for people tuning into this video. Anyway, back to the podcast. Though the first few episodes are specifically focused on the Armenian Genocide, the podcast will in fact be covering a very diverse range of topics, right? What can listeners expect next?
Yes, exactly. So I'm trying to concentrate on the SWANA region itself. So, that can include Lebanon, Egypt, various countries there, and also indigenous people from across the globe, as I mentioned. So we might be doing a potential story with an indigenous group in Colombia, for example, this year. So I also had the question, are they all going to be like very sad and depressing stories? The answer is no. There's going to be, things about culture, things that you can really learn about with the country, and that's the aim. So it will be all sorts. The plan is to have a new season, hopefully early to mid this year, and have around 6 episodes, which are all different, released monthly. One thing which I'm also excited about is having these listening parties where we go through important topics within episodes. So we're set to have one in London, Barcelona, and Berlin in the next couple of months, which is quite exciting. So yeah, watch out for that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I guess the last question would be, could you remind us again how we can access this amazing content?
Of course. So you can listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm sure it'll be there. Feel free to follow us on Instagram as well, which is @uncovering.roots. You'll also find us on Twitter or X and Facebook. And if you have any questions about the podcast or the stories, or even if you feel like you have a story and you think it can make a very good audio story, reach out to me. We can have a chat. I'm always all ears to hear other people's stories. Thank you.
Thank you to you, and make sure to hit follow, everyone. It's been a pleasure on behalf of the ANC talking to you, Max. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.